Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. This episode of Life's Best Medicine is brought to you by the great people at Simply Snackin'. 10 flavors of beef and chicken, humanely raised, grass-fed beef, free-range chicken. And I'm excited about the 10 flavors because I'm heading off to the jungles of Guatemala on a medical trip, and I can have a new flavor every day and not get bored. I'm going to pack them in my suitcase because they're light and easy, and I could bust them out whenever I need to. So if I get stuck somewhere and everyone's eating terrible food, I could have some healthy, great snacks and still stick to my low-carb lifestyle. So thank you, Simply Snackin', for again sponsoring this episode and for bringing these important stories to the people. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. This is one I'm excited about. You know, I've had some fairly big names on and we got to get their story. We have a new up and comer who's going to be a massive name, and I've seen his posts on Twitter and I've been pretty amazed. I'm like, this kid's smart. And just to give you a background in medicine's what's happening these days, there's a lot of up and coming MD, PhD people, maybe not a lot, but there's a few who are very vocal and very critical of doctors who've been in the field, you know, watching people die, trying to help them best they can. And this person hasn't treated a patient. Now, this is not the person I'm having on the podcast. But I made the comment on Twitter, I'm usually pretty nice, but I said, look, next time I need a med student consult, I'll give you a call. Otherwise, kind of back down a little bit. And then I see Nick come on, Nick Norwitz, who I have on, MD, PhD. And this guy has been respectful, kind, and he's thrown out study after study, data after data. I'm bookmarking all the stuff he's putting out there. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is looking at the data and he understands it. And I didn't even know his backstory. I just knew he was someone who is respectable. You're from a little place called Harvard. Is that like a big school or?
Well, I'm not there yet. They rejected me flat out undergrad. I went to Dartmouth undergrad, and then I did my PhD over at Oxford, and then I guess now they want me.
I guess Oxford's okay too. This guy Zuby went there too, right?
Yeah. No. It was a fun time.
So you went to the place with the rapper, so that's good. He's one of my favorite guys on Twitter too. So Nick, tell your story. Tell your qualifications are clear. Yeah, you could give people that, but tell them your story about your own health journey and how it brought you to be the scientist and the doctor you are.
Yeah. So I guess the place to start was with the complete absence of disease for most of my childhood. Like I was what people consider the picture of health for, first 18 years of my life. Active kid, ate reasonably well, kind of a standard American diety, but nobody would really tell the difference. I like to eat a lot of fruit. I went out, I had friendlies and ice cream and whatever. But I seemed pretty healthy. And then when I turned 17, 18, I started getting into distance running, which went great for the first year. I was a pretty successful distance runner. But then I started getting these fractures, and they just kept on getting more severe. Nobody would give me a bone scan, even though I requested it, just because it was like, you don't have any family history. We have no reason to assume you have bone problems. Things got really bad. I started getting fractures in my femur and my spine, all sorts of weird things. I broke this one bone in my foot called the cuneiform, and went to the foot doc. This is right before I got the first bone scan, and he's like, wow, I've been doing feet for 40 years. I've never seen someone break a bone like this. I'm like, well, can I get a bone scan now? And they're like, well, okay. So then finally I get a bone scan, and it reveals I have severe osteoporosis. And I'm just not using that term willy-nilly. My TZ scores were negative 3.3, which is really low. As Brian, you can attest, like that's low bone density. I had the bone density of like a 70-year-old woman or something. At 18, when a year before I was running 3,000 miles a year, go every Sunday, get up, go run 20 miles at the gym, like active, healthy person. So that was really a wake-up call. And and there was no answer forthcoming. Really, there wasn't an explanation for a couple years.
And just to give people an idea, let them know your body type, like how much you weigh, how tall you are.
I'm 5'7", and at that point in time, I was like 125 pounds. Just like I've never had any subcutaneous fat. Like I was 11 and I had a six pack. It was a little bit weird. Some maybe weird genetic stuff going on, but yeah, I'm kind of slim, lean kind of athlete, and yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like you're a 400-pound guy trying to take up running and you've
No,
been out of shape and all that stuff, and you're a
no,
fit, young, healthy guy, and you're getting fractures.
I thought, I didn't think twice about what I ate because it was just like the, skinny is healthy ethos that you have. And my dad was like, we'd get some ice cream. He's like, oh, you're just gonna run it off at soccer practice. And so, we go to the diner and maybe I get like a club sandwich with turkey. Maybe I get a shake with it, some fries, but I'd eat my salad with it. And then we go to Dairy Queen and I get like a Blizzard. And that was probably a meal that had 400 grams of carbs. I think the Dairy Queen Blizzards, you can look. It's actually, I find it very an impressive feat of engineering how they're able to get so much sugar in those things without any fiber. You look at someone who's like, wow, you got 160 grams of sugar and 0 grams of fiber. That's actually that's impressive, man. So that's
Yeah, we're really good at that. Our modern food environment is very good at that. I mean, I'm impressed too. You're looking to go, wow, that's pretty amazing. And you know how addictive you can make it and how, yeah, really, it is really amazing.
And I would say, maybe addiction is a too strong a word, but I very much ate all the time and I loved eating. Like most people, I ate it on every 3 or 4 hours. I thought that was healthy. And I thought I could get away with it. I definitely wasn't fat. So I thought I was healthy. And then there was this weird thing going on with my bones, but maybe that was just a fluke. So I kind of passed it off as a fluke. It was a really hard diagnosis, especially when I loved running so much. I thought, this is going to be something I do for the rest of my life. It was something I really loved. And then I lost that, and that was really tough. But I came to terms with it over time, like most people do. It took a little while. In fact, you can see it behind me. Maybe you can't quite see, but that's one of the things I'm proudest of. My first year, I did a lot of marathons, half marathons, and I was pretty good. I was, my half marathon time was like 1:15, and I'm like 1 hour 15 minutes, and I'm like 17, and then I'm winning some marathons. I qualify. I was the youngest qualifier for the Boston Marathon, but my first fracture came about 6 weeks before. It was actually training on Heartbreak Hill. And I loved it so much. And that event, the Boston Marathon, I grew up right on Heartbreak Hill, watching it. I was 4 years old. It meant so much to me that I ended up doing the whole race. I had my red bib already, so I was in the first wave on crutches. So I did the whole 26.2 miles on crutches. An experience from which I realized, I know we didn't want to go too medical with this, but you can activate shingles virus through friction, apparently, because the chafing on the underarms that activated the shingles dermatome. I remember dropping in the tent and they're like, oh, wow, you have shingles. That's so weird.
And probably the stress of all that and training and, I mean, emotional, there's a lot of factors involved. I've seen people going through divorce just get shingles. They got a big surgery, they get shingles afterwards. So there's a lot of emotional and sheer friction. I mean, that's pretty amazing. But also that speaks to you as a person, as your dedication, because we all know, I mean, you happen to be blessed with smarts and intelligence, and med school is really a grind. It's like that. You're on crutches trying to go around to keep up with people who are able-bodied sometimes. That's how I felt, at least. So yeah, like to have that drive to push forward, that's carried you in your life.
I don't really even think it's not a chore. It's like I didn't do it to punish myself. I did it because, wow, this is an amazing opportunity to just be part of this community. You could feel like, experience a little bit of pain. It was a wonderful day that I will never forget. There was some pain later on. It was somewhat inevitable, but it was just like the most wonderful, wonderful day. I always try to keep a positive attitude towards these things. I'm like, going into med school, people keep telling me, oh, it's going to be like so much work. You're going to like be, underwater. I'm like, why are you saying that? Why can't you say there's so much to learn? There's like this amazing community you're going to be a part of, and you're going to be working towards a place where you can help people and improve lives. Just a different spin on it. But that's where I was at 18, really loving sports, pretty active, breaking course records. And actually, I did a lot of different athletic things, but one of my trademarks in high school was push-up-a-thons. Did I talk to you about this, Brian, before?
No, no.
So when I entered high school, I used to live in Connecticut. I went to this high school, Daniel Hand High School. It's actually a little thing. This is me from, so I was 14, over 10 years ago. You can look it up. It's like The Body Achieves What the Mind Believes on Patch. And it's a little like 14-year-old me, although I look like I'm 8. And when I entered high school, I'm like, every year we have these fitness challenges. And I'm a super competitive person. And I wanted to break a record, a school record. So first of all, I wanted to come top of my class in every category, like whatever, running and sit-ups, chin-ups, whatever. But I wanted to break a record, and I chose push-ups. And they have you do them to a military style cadence. It's a tape. They're monitored. If you do an improper form one, they cut you out. And so I asked my teacher, Miss Amasino, what's the record? And she's like, oh, some football player, senior said it a couple of years ago, was 72. I'm like, I can do that. So I train, and she did not think I was she thought maybe I'd come close. Maybe I'd do it. I did 240. I just did. And I remember, I'm like, oh, I guess I'm kind of good at this. So then it became my thing. And so every year then after, I did one a year to raise money for various causes. I was really into the World Wildlife Fund. So I used to have actually I had this little group, Baking for Bears. My friends used to get together and bake the most obesogenic things you can imagine. So maybe I wasn't doing as much good as I thought I was doing.
No, for bears is good. That's what they feed bears to make them fat. Walmart gives them junk food, man. So
yeah,
you were really helping the bears, not the people, but you're making people into bears instead of tigers. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it was like graham crackers plus butter plus condensed milk and sweetened coconut and like multiple times of chocolate and like roasted walnuts. It was just not healthy for people, but we'd raise some money. And I was also doing the push-up-a-thons for that as well. So I'd eat one of those. I get up in the morning, train, do like 2,000 push-ups before school, then go to school, then run afterwards. Again, a very active kid. But every year I did that, and my end record was 427. But then I did the marathon thing. So bottom line, you looked at me and you'd be like, wow, this kid is got his stuff together. He's a good student. He's a great athlete. He looks super healthy and happy kid. And then he gets osteoporosis, which is kind of challenging. And that was right upon entering college. So it was like, I really wanted to join the endurance running team. In fact, I was on the listserv for Dartmouth's endurance running team, DIRT, for all 4 years. Because I just had this hope that I would come back to it. And I never unsubscribed from the listserv from like the first day I subscribed. So I get the emails and just be like, oh, I really want to go. And I never unsubscribed. I was a senior. I was still getting the emails, even though I could never run. But I still swam. I tried to do the triathlon thing and swimming and whatever. And I thought it would just be the osteoporosis. Again, that was a fluke. Turned out not to be a fluke, because near the end of college, I started having gut issues. And this is another thing I loved. I loved athletics, and I loved academics, and I loved food. I was just a super foodie. Like, I would eat anything. Not only did I enjoy food, but I just enjoyed experimenting with any food. So like, yeah, I like the ice cream and the burgers, but like, I was the kid's like, oh, duck's tongue, like, give it to me. Like cow's heart, frog ovaries, like, I want to try it. Like, food was so fun for me. And I had no food aversions whatsoever, no food restrictions. I was one of those people that's like, gluten-free, that's a fake thing. Like, just like enjoy food. A mindset I now feel very guilty about. Kind of got a rude awakening. I guess I got my comeuppance, but I started just, everything I ate would just hurt. And I didn't really understand why. Long story short, I ended up being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. So ulcers were opening up in my colon, and that was causing things like bloody diarrhea. And slowly but surely, it got worse. As I continued to eat the same thing because I just didn't know what to do. And I consult with nutritionists, and then they went to the bone thing. They thought, you're skinny, maybe you need to put on some weight. So they're trying to treat that at the same time. They're trying to deal with my colitis. They say there's no evidence that diet can help colitis. So they're saying, eat, some ice cream to gain weight. That's good. I was literally getting calls like, have you had like your third, fourth, fifth serving of carb today. I'm like, my face is breaking out. Like, I feel really unwell. Like, it's hard to focus in class. I have brain fog. And like, no, you have to do this. So I'm being compliant, but this just spirals out of control and gets really bad until the colitis is just, it's a chronic problem, and I'm able to hide it pretty well. I think, in my opinion, I've dealt with a lot of things. In my opinion, like the uncontrollable gut stuff is one of those really troublesome, embarrassing, silent diseases that is all too prevalent, and just like even IBSs that people don't talk about. So I'll give you a snapshot into the example, and like how I was trying to hide this. It was, and I only ever first told anybody about this like a couple of years ago when I was talking to Cecile, a mutual friend.
Cecile, by the way, yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she's amazing. But we were putting something together, and I'm like, I might as well reveal this. So this was my graduation day at Dartmouth, and I was really excited and nervous, but because I was the valedictory speaker at commencement, so I got to speak right after the invited speaker. It was Mindy Kaling, a professional comedian and actress, pretty charismatic woman. Like she was in like Time's top 100 most influential women or something. And first of all, I don't know why they put a nerdy little kid right after her. Like, why would they make me follow her? But they did. And I was kind of excited about that, but I was terrified about my gut stuff. So I wasn't terrified about, delivering the speech, but it was just like, what if I have a gurgle? Like, what if I have bloody diarrhea on stage in front of 11,000 people? 11,000 people there. And I just, I'm a kid, I'm 18, I don't know what to do. So I fasted for 24 hours, then took a laxative the night before, then gave myself a coffee. I hadn't even prescribed enemas, but I read about coffee enema. So I gave myself a coffee enema at 3 a.m. And then I attended graduation, put a smile on for everybody. Again, just like a silent thing. But this is kind of that was an extreme day, but what my days looked like trying to prepare for the day. Life just became the challenge for me. Like, academics aside, athletics aside, whatever, life was hard and eating was terrifying. So I still wanted to go to the dining hall with my friends and, eat all the things we used to. I had a friend, my best friend there, his name was Brant, and we called him the Cookie Monster because he always, we'd a massive dessert table, and it was just the culture there. It's like, we're young athletic. I would go work out with him, and then we just like chow down. And so he held the record. He's like, yeah, I want to see how many of these really nice soft chocolate chip cookies he can eat. So he like ate 26 in a sitting, and then we called him Cookie Monster after that. And in fact, I called it out at graduation. I gave him props for eating 26 cookies in front of 11,000 people, and then in the graduation pamphlet with all the statistics, it's like, Mindy Kaling's speech was 18 minutes. There were like 4 students who got military accommodations and said, and the valedictorian's friend ate 26 cookies. They put that in there. So
you made it famous, man.
A funny cultural, well, I felt bad they didn't call him up, but yeah, he's we wanted to put a plaque up there. Right.
Well, Nick, you raise a point. I just want to jump in for a sec here because
sorry.
With irritable bowel syndrome, colitis, all that, people don't realize the mental, emotional aspects of that. I have people that say, no, I can't go on vacation because I have to have a bathroom nearby. I can't travel too far from home. Work is an inconvenience. And, it's really, and it's embarrassing. Like when your bowels are going all the time, you're in the middle of a conversation, you got to go. And, it's really, people don't realize how much of an emotional, especially if you're not sleeping at night, you're scared about this stuff, and stress makes it worse, and you get into that spiral where it's really, really devastating. IBS, there's studies showing that it's the nervous system. They're not nutty people. It's the nervous system is very hyper responsive, so they get a big pain signal when the rest of us wouldn't even notice it at all.
Yeah, it's I was at a point where I'm like, if you could tell me you could deal with symptoms, you just didn't have to eat. You just didn't, like, no food ever again is going to pass through your mouth. Would you, do that? I'm like, I don't care about food. I just don't want to feel this way. I will never taste a good thing again in my life if I can just not have these symptoms or make them less severe. And you get to a point where, if you have a mindset like mine, you approach things very systematically. You find something over time that works, like a system, but then you're locked into that system. So I had all my eating times, my macronutrients just like balanced out. This was a little bit after the point of, finding a routine that worked a little bit better for me and controlled my symptoms. But then you're locked into that, and that's another kind of terror. So it was just like, I was in Japan with my family. There's another anecdote with the Rugby World Cup. And it was a really special time for just me and my dad and my uncle and my bro cousins and my sister. I'd never been to Japan. I'd always wanted to go. So it was a really, special event, but there would be, like you said, travel becomes very difficult and you have to have everything scheduled out. So I had 2 suitcases, one of which was filled with food. Like I wanted to come prep with my food, and I had to have my meal times scheduled out. So we'd be going out to eat. And I remember being caught in this scenario where there was nothing at a restaurant for me, and I had like a backup of like olive oil and sardines. And I literally, because I was so scared of how things could spiral out of control, it's like a domino chain. I left the table on my uncle's birthday. I said, no, I can't do this. Went into the bathroom at the restaurant with my sardines and just sat in the toilet and ate sardines and olive oil. And I was just so upset that I had to be doing this, but I felt I did. I was like tearing up, and I came back, and it was the most horrible, awkward sitting there feeling, because everybody knew kind of what just had happened. But that's the kind of thing you have to cover up when you're dealing with these gut issues. So the osteoporosis threw me for a loop. I came to terms with that. The gut stuff, just, man, that made life pretty intolerable. To the point, well, actually, it's hard to find motivation, but even that didn't really motivate me, I think, to fully take responsibility for my health. Because I just still wanted to be a kid and rely on people. At this point, I was like 21, 22. And I just wanted to be like doctors tell me what to do. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to doctors, like listening to their advice, taking the drugs, whatever, and they're not helping. But that's like what you do, especially when you're a kid, especially when both your parents are MD PhDs, which both mine are. So I had all the resources in the world. Like I had all the reason to believe that medicine would come to bat for me. And for me, it didn't work. So that was, end of college. And then I went to Oxford. And within a few weeks there, I had the worst colitis flare of my life. And I dropped like 20% of my body weight in a couple weeks. At this time, literally, I was still being told to, eat fudge, put on weight. So I'm trying that, but that's just shooting me in the foot because I'm having terrible inflammation. And I ended up in the John Radcliffe, it's an NHS hospital palliative care ward. My heart rate was in the 20s. That is not an exaggeration. If you watch the documentary, there's a little picture of the monitor.
Yeah, and we're going to put a link to all your stuff too, because I want people to see what you're talking about. Right.
Yeah. The documentary, I think, is articulates it much better than I could. A friend, Florence, put it together, just because sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about my story for obvious reasons. And I don't want to be like, the way I talk now, I very much feel like, woe is me. I overcame adversity, blah, blah, blah. But now I meet people that have overcome so much more. I was talking to Chris Cornell at Low Carb USA the other day, and he's giving me props and then like drops on the side that he overcame cancer. I'm like, I did nothing compared to some people that I meet. And we'll get to that later.
Chris has been a huge friend, and he's done a lot behind the scenes, and we're going to have him come on and tell his story too. Because that's the thing is, all you guys have a story. We all have a story. My story too, struggling with weight my whole life. And I want to help people lose weight, and I want to help them, battle diabetes, which decimated my family. And so all of us have a story. And I think, I'm a man of faith, and I think God uses us sometimes to go through these things so we can help other people. Like at the time, it doesn't make sense. And even for you at that time, how did you ground yourself? Like, was it faith? Was it yoga? Was it like knowledge? How did you ground yourself when everything was like, the sport you love is taken from you? You can't gain weight. People look at you and go, you're so lucky. And really, as an aside, people who are listening while Nick's thinking of his answer, look, people look at you and go, he's so lucky he doesn't get fat like me. But guess what? When you get fat, it's because your body's protecting you. That subcutaneous fat is protective. So if you take that away, Nick doesn't have that ability. So he's at a disadvantage. He has to eat healthier than you do, because if he overeats, he's storing fat in a way that's causing his body to be worse. Maybe his colitis. We don't know enough about the gut microbiome and all this stuff yet. We're at the infancy, but the visceral fat is sitting right on top of that stuff. And Nick just posted papers on how this communicates with the brain and depression, anxiety, stress, and all these other factors that, like, we may be looking at the wrong source sometimes. What I'm getting at. So Nick, getting back to you, I think that's something that's really important for you. Like, what did you lean on during those times? What kept you going and not just saying, I'm done?
Um, I don't actually think I have a good answer because I think I was pretty much done. It was so just to finish that little anecdote. Um, well, this is a funny aside, but the only picture I have from that time because it was so shameful and just upsetting. Like I looked emaciated. I was sitting in a hospital bed with like things all over me. I didn't want pictures taken. But the picture of the heart rate monitor was at 30 because my mom came over from Oxford. Mom came over to Oxford when she was just worried I was like dying. They were talking about like, heart surgery, this, that, or the other, didn't know what was going on. And the one time my heart rate actually hit 30 was when a cute nurse came in the room. I was like, oh, I guess your testosterone levels are okay, Nick. And I'm like, so that was the one pleasant moment of that time I had. That was the most miserable 3 days of my life, though. And that's when I hit rock bottom. They actually discharged me with a heart rate of 28, if you can believe that. They actually did. I don't know how that's not medical malpractice, but they did.
Well, it depends what your baseline is too, right? Like if your baseline is a lot of athletes, and at that time you couldn't be an athlete anymore.
That's what they argue. They are. Right. So this is like, again, just I can't believe how they got away with. Well, I'm not going to sue them, but because I just wanted to leave at that point. I hadn't slept for 3 days because the monitor had been going off and they were like demented screams. The first time I ever like actually witnessed death. Somebody died. And it was just terrible. And all that sleep deprivation was just not helping me. So I was happy to go. But what they ended up saying after a bunch of days is like, okay, you have a low heart rate because I guess you're an athlete, although I hadn't then run for like a long, long time. And also, we found this like esoteric paper from Mexico in Spanish that said this woman had like high dose turmeric and she had some bradycardia. So we see you're on curcumin for your colitis. So yeah, that must have caused a bradycardia, which is a bullshit. Sorry, maybe I don't know what
it's all right, man.
But
I agree with you on that one.
Even my brain was not being perfused at that point. But even like, well, that was an acute case. I've been taking this for years, so I don't know why it would happen now. But also, I had the mental clarity, like I can type on my iPhone what is the half-life of curcumin in the human body. It says 7 to 13 hours. I'm like, well, I've been here for over 3 days, and my heart rate's still low. Like, but no, it's the curcumin. Anyway, I'm like, fine. If that's the level of thinking you're going to put in, then I'm going to leave.
And that's the problem with medicine. We don't think anymore. We just look at numbers and go, okay. And, the other side of the coin, it just struck us. It reminded me of the story. This lady, every time she came to the hospital, she was sick and she had dwarfism, but her blood pressure was always like 85 over 40, always. I'm like, look, this lady's been admitted because I'm the ICU. I'm trying to not bring another patient in for my own self-interest because I get a little bit more sleep that night. And I'm like, look, guys, her blood pressure is this every time. Every time she's fine. And you put her in the ICU and you do all this crazy stuff, but that's her. That's how she is. I followed her in the outpatient clinic. That's her blood pressure every day of her life. She doesn't need to be in the ICU. And in your case, they're kind of making the opposite argument saying, oh, we want to get him out. So he's fine. His heart rate's 28. Let's just send him home. Like no one would do that. I agree with you. That is just crazy stuff.
And I do want to actually like just take a slight tangent because I know you and I agree on this. There's a lot of like on Twitter and elsewhere doctor bashing. I do not believe doctors are out just to make a dime or to hurt you or or whatever.
Oh, young man, we'll have a discussion about that.
Super well intentioned. It's just this broken system that frustrates the hell out of me. So I'll probably get more clarity on just how broken that system is when I'm doing med school and residency. Because the people that I worked with, even the doctors that like discharged me at that hospital, I think they really, really wanted to help me, and they were doing their best. They just couldn't because of the constraints on them. And over time, that takes a toll. So anyway, I just want to say that
Nick, I will totally agree with you on that. I think that's part of the problem is people go, okay, this keto thing's a fad. I'm not going to learn about it because I got too much other stuff I'm working for. I know because I was there. As a matter of fact, driving in yesterday, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I am doing, and you know what? You'll know what I'm doing. What I said on my personal statement. Right. When I applied to med school, I go, look, here's why I want to go into medicine to help people and hear, all this stuff that we all kind of say. But I think we forget. I think I've seen people, it's about the money. It's not about that they love their patients and they sacrifice for their patients. But it's rare. I think most of us really want to do the right thing. We just don't know what the right thing is. Right. We've been told stuff all over and over. And the other thing I'll say as a plug for you, because I respect integrity. And you said, well, I was just on this podcast and I did this mechanism that may not be right or it isn't right. And I want to make it right. right? Because I looked at it further and what I said wasn't right. And that's how we need in medicine. That's what we need more of, to say, yeah, I thought that worked, but it doesn't. Because I told people for years, eat 6 meals a day, eat heart healthy whole wheat and oatmeal. And then I realized that's wrong. So I just told my patients, hey, I was wrong. The data, what I was told was wrong. I never looked at the data myself because I trusted the people who told me that. Right.
Yeah.
So I think having people like you who have integrity that roll around and you understand the science and you can look at it and you have honesty. It's not about saying some crazy stuff so you get notoriety or you get more followers. It's about, ultimately it comes down to your integrity and your motivation to help people. That's what defines a doctor, to be able to educate and teach people and say, look, we have further evidence now. I have to change my view.
Yeah, I think we need to remove ego from medicine, and I think that's the mark of a great doctor, when you can see he doesn't have an ego and he's open to listening to you. That really struck me with I had a knee surgery a while ago because I was having inflammatory problems. It was like monster thing called Opelika. Anyway, the doctor that did the surgery was Lyle McKaylee, and I remember I had been to multiple of his offices, and I just really liked him. He was a great doctor. Amazing bedside manner. I thought, I look forward to going seeing him. I came out of the meetings at the appointments, and I was like, oh, it made me feel good about whatever was going on, even if the problem hadn't been solved. And only after multiple appointments did I look around on the walls and realize, wow, this guy, like, if you look up Lyle McKaylee, like, he has his own center. He has like awards from everywhere. One of the most accomplished orthopedic surgeons maybe in the world. And I'm like, I'm on this academic treadmill trying to achieve that. And I didn't even notice it. Even though I'm trying to achieve it, I didn't even notice it for multiple appointments. All I noticed was that I liked him. I liked his bedside manner. When I asked questions, he took the time to explain it to me. He didn't patronize me when I said something. He heard me out. Like, that's what makes a good doctor. It doesn't matter if you go to Harvard Med or wherever Med or whatever. The degree's on your wall, and it took me a while to figure this out. Don't matter that much. They can give you a little microphone. It's kind of nice. Obviously, I didn't say I'm not going when Harvard said you can come. But at the end of the day, it's just like, again, integrity. People measure you by the qualities that you have control over. You don't have control over your IQ. You don't have control over your, you have some control over your body comp, but not everybody's going to have a six pack and just have a lean physique. That's fine. People don't measure you by that. They measure you by your qualities. And I've been through too much to have a giant ego around, am I right, am I wrong? I'm happy to debate people, and sometimes I get a little bit maybe appropriately aggressive. I don't know. I am still, like, I'm 25, so they say that the prefrontal cortex in males only completely develops until at 26. So I have like one more year of my brain just not really tapping down my impulses. But if I say something wrong, like you, I want to be called out on it. And even if it's embarrassing, like it was on Low Carb USA, I said something about statins inhibiting HMG-CoA reductase and that potentially inhibiting ketogenesis, which is just wrong. It is that edit
Nick,
is now
Nick, say that one more time. I think you just had weird internet for a second. Hey, Jack, cut that part out. We're just gonna go ahead and say that again, and we'll just have him edit it. It just got robotic for a second. Okay, Jack, go ahead and start recording now.
From where?
From right now, just start saying I was wrong on Low Carb USA, that part. So Jack, cut this part out and then start recording here.
So yeah, I was I guess we just cut out for a sec, but what I was just saying was, just as an example, like I was dead wrong. I went on Low Carb USA with Doug Reynolds, and my mind was going in a bunch of different directions. And I speculated about statins inhibiting ketogenesis because they inhibit this enzyme HMG-CoA reductase, which I said was essential for ketogenesis. It's actually downstream of the pathway. And after the fact, I'm like, wait, no, did I say that? Oh, crap. That was embarrassing, but I'd rather claim that embarrassment. And I issued an edit. I'm like, Doug, as soon as this goes out, like, put this edit right below the podcast. Before like any of my intro, anything about me, just like, Nick said this was wrong.
Yeah, and this is like Nick and I talked this morning, and like Nick messed up my workout, and I messed up his this morning, right? I need it more than he does. But
monkeys say not do, because I think we both skipped our workouts.
Yeah, but I'm doing it tonight, Nick, man. But this is important. I wanted to get you because you're a guy that's been on my radar for a long time, and trying to get you on Low Carb MD and get you here because people need to hear a story, and I think that is what it comes down to: integrity. Like Jason Fung, when I started this stuff, he reached out to me and helped me. So if I can help you, that's what I want to do. But also, Ira Cummins reached out to me. Ben Bickman reached out to me. These guys, have been so stellar and such an influence in my life, because I can't do what I do without their knowledge and what they've done. And that's what I saw the value in you, is like, hey, this guy gets this stuff. So I see stuff clinically, and this is what is really, really going to save medicine. I see stuff clinically, and I say, this is working, but I don't know why. Nick, can you figure out what is happening? Why I'm seeing what I'm seeing? I don't understand. And I can speculate on what I'm seeing, but I could be wrong. But ultimately, for me, if my patient gets better, I don't care the mechanism necessarily, but I like to know that like what I'm thinking is correct. So I reach out to you, Ben Bickman, people that I respect, that I know are going to say the truth. Even if I don't like it, they go, Brian, you're totally wrong. And here's why. It's not that hormone. This is the one that does it. You don't understand science. Okay, cool. But I'm seeing my patient not losing weight sometimes, and all their numbers get better. They're getting metabolically healthier. That's what I ultimately care about. If you look great and have a heart attack, like you, right? Your situation, like your patient, like, people go, oh, you look great. You're healthy. You're not. You're having osteoporosis. You're having colitis. You're having all these crazy stuff. And they go, oh, your heart rate's 28. Okay, go home. It's like, what? I mean, that to me is mind blowing.
I did not give, pardon the colitis pun, two shits about my six pack when I was sitting with a heart rate of 28, feeling like utter crap. Like, it just doesn't. I know people, weight. First of all, weight is not a trivial thing, but if that's your problem, you can address it. But just don't be jealous of someone else, because you don't know what's going on with them, mental health or other conditions. I really liked this thought puzzle, I guess, maybe not thought puzzle, but I read in, I forget what book it was. I think it was William B. Irvin, the Stoic Challenge, but he talks about, or maybe it's a podcast, the misfortune marketplace. Imagine you can take all your misfortunes and fortunes and go to this marketplace and trade with people. You can just trade your misfortunes and fortunes with anybody else. Would you do it? And who would you do it with? And would you just put it in and try to do a lottery? And I think about that. I'm like, even when I was at my worst, I probably wouldn't trade, at least not randomly, because on the global scheme of things, I was still super lucky. Like, I had parents that were taking care of me financially. Got a scholarship to Oxford. I had a great education. I had a great future ahead of me, provided I got through this. I was still very fortunate. I think people just, change your point of comparison. There's always that guy who's making $2 million a year and his buddy's making 2.5, and he's just upset about it. He's bitter about it.
Man, I'm telling you, this is why I love Life's Best Medicine. That is wisdom. You're a young guy. Yeah, I'm twice your age, right? So that's what I look at. I think about that. I go, who would I trade with? To give up my wife and my kids, what would I want to, it's not worth it. You start looking, and I really, honestly, I don't know anyone who I would trade positions with. I don't know anyone. No matter how many millions of dollars, if I had $10 million sitting in my bank, would I trade you for that? I wouldn't. I really, really honestly, I can honestly tell you that, some people have an easier life and things look better, but when you talk to them, you realize, man, I know friends who are multi-millionaires, and their personal life is a disaster. Professionally, they're very good. And you look and you go, wow. And I know multi-millionaires who have their act together and they're loving life and they're happy, but I still go, look, I wouldn't trade my wife for all the money you got. And I have actually a guy who really helped me when I got my house. And I go, I wouldn't trade with you for a second, because I see your life, really just being honest with him. I go, I see the fruit of your life. It's like, you got to change something, man. You can have all the money and you can have a really nice bank account, but you could be a miserable person, and you can not treat your wife right, and you could not treat your kids right, and you could just be caught up in having that nice Ferrari. And it's amazing. I mean, having that perspective is what makes you great, is saying, look, let me count my blessings. Let me look at my entire existence. And if it's not good, say, how do I make it better?
Yeah. I mean, having that perspective doesn't make you great. It makes you happy. And that's even more important. It's there's always something to desire. And so what makes us unhappy is that gap between what we have and what we desire. The thing is, there's always going to be that next thing when you desire. So it's, when you hit that point, the thing you get, the Ferrari or whatever, then you just create a thing to desire. And the gap stays consistent. The only way to get the gap to close and be happier is to start to desire the things you have. Your wife and kids. Realize these are the things that I really desire, and I already have them. So there is no gap. Therefore, I'm happy.
Well, and that's true. And I think a lot of people don't see that, and I see that on Twitter. I see people that are nasty and they pick on people that have accomplished great things. And you go, why are you nasty? Like the med student PhD that I was referring to at the beginning. As a matter of fact, when I apologies to you, a couple of people thought that I was talking about you. I'm like, no, I'm not talking about him. I'm using him as an example of, look, you have the integrity, the honesty, the brilliance, really, the life experience. You have all this stuff. Plus, you show respect to people who've plowed the field, who've been out there working their tails off, right? And so I think the more we show that in medicine, the more we say, look, I didn't come up with this theory. Like I always give credit to people. I go, I didn't make this up. Ben Bikman, this is his graph. If he doesn't sit in his lab and work his tail off with mice and whatever he's doing over there, I don't have the tools to help you, right? They're the ones who do. I wouldn't come up with this on my own. I saw it, but I didn't understand what I was seeing. And so that's what's so great when we all play our role. And I look, I'm not the researcher. I'm not the guy who's gonna, I'm not organized. That's not my thing. But guys like you, Tro can even do it. Like that's a gift, that's a skill set. And when you have that, you can make the data integrate stuff and prove what we're seeing, right? That's what I mean is like, some of us see something and go, I see this, I don't know why. Figure it out and tell me. So that's why it's so important that we all have our role. And going back to what you're saying is like, look, stop comparing yourself to everyone else. Do what you're called to do, because I'm never going to be a scientist like you. I'm not going to be the guy who comes up with the study first. It's just not my nature. It's not me. So when you come up with it, you go, hey, Brian, look at this study. Here's what you're saying. Look at this study, this study, this study. And I can say, oh, that fits with what I'm seeing. That's interesting. Cool. Why is no one talking about this? Because no one's put the whole puzzle together. Like some of us are working on the edge of the puzzle and you guys are putting on the hard part in the middle, right? So by the end, we look at the puzzle and go, wow, because of your experience, it drove you to do these things. And I think for you saying, look, I've been there, and I think when people go through stuff like Chris Cornell, like you, when you go through stuff where everything's either taken from you or you're really sick, you appreciate stuff that much more. Because when you're not in pain, you go, man, I remember when I was. Like for us, like even now, I remember Hell Week in football. My buddies, we get together and go, remember how brutal that was? Remember when you threw up that day? Remember when you almost passed out? Remember when you hit me really hard and we had a concussion for a week? All those things that were hard things at the time, you look back with fondness and go, man, we had a good time, didn't we? Even though it was hard at the time, like, guys who go through war together, man, there's a bond there that no one else can understand. When you put your life in someone's hand or as a teammate, those kind of things, or running like you did, to feel that joy of, I actually enjoyed running the other day. I was like, this is weird. I'm enjoying this. Like something's wrong. I'm getting a consult with you and a couple other guys that I really like that are runners. I'm like, what's wrong with me? This is weird. I'm enjoying it now. But anyways, sorry about the tirade. But no, I just wanted to draw what you're saying. It's so important because my read on you, just like, and you could correct me, I'm like, this is a type A guy who wants to know everything. He wants to dive in and know the science and understand. You have the difference between you and other med students is like, you're saying, look, I'm going to be a better doctor. I want to learn there's so much to learn that I just love this. Other people are saying, I have to learn all this stuff to be a doctor. I have to do it. Like there's a difference between being loving. Like when I go to work, like my neighbor just said, Brian, you work as much as you used to. I'm like, yeah, but I'm having fun all day. I'm loving it because I'm seeing people getting better. I'm seeing them drop their meds. I'm seeing people have hope. I'm seeing people like doing stuff. And I'm like, what great job is that? I get paid to do this. Is ridiculous, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, that's not a hard read to get on me. You saw it like Low Carb USA. I'm just like, first of all, there's like 9 hours of lecture a day, plus I'm listening to another 9 that podcast that somebody referred to me. And then I'm like up at 3 a.m. posting. I'm like, I'm just reading this paper that Ben Bikman told me about. It's like amazing bifurcation of signaling the liver. It's so exciting. And it's like a 3 a.m. post. And I'm even sitting, we talked beforehand and then we took a little like a half-hour break, but I'm sitting here, I'm like, what am I going to do? And I'm like printing out these papers, like, oh, this is this cool one. Key et al. 2021 cell reports, ApoE4 impairs neuron astrocyte coupling of fatty acid metabolism. What's going on there? There's so many questions and not enough time. So yeah, you're accurate in that respect. I'm type AAA.
But you're type AAA, but you have the compassion, the kind of, see that combination. That's what I see in you. That's rare. There's people like, seriously, in my career, I've had surgeons, not where I am now, but when I was in LA, I had surgeons that were great surgeons. I'm like, look, he's a great surgeon, but you're not going to like him. He's a jerk, but he's good at what he does. He can fix your problem. So sometimes it's like, it's unfortunate, but to say this is a great person and a great scientist and their integrity, there's certain people, I know their integrity. And if they say something, it is true. Like you hear Ben Bikman, one of the smartest guys. The reason I love the guy, first of all, he's a family guy and he loves his family and that's his first priority. Second of all, when he says something, he goes, look, here's what I think, but this is not in the data yet. This is not proven. And he clarifies it. For me, I just say, yeah, this is how it works. And I don't really know, like, for sure know, because I haven't done the science, right? So having guys like you who say, yeah, that's what we think, but it's not 100% proven. Because the reason it's important is like, if you define yourself as a keto guy. If you say anything, well, this other diet works, because I've seen examples of other diets work. So I can't say this is the only way. Like if I see your religion working for you, I don't say, well, my way is the only way. And if you don't do my religion, you're done for, right? Because I believe what I believe and I know what I've seen. So once you see it, and we should not be afraid of alternate examples that argue with what we believe. We need to figure out why it's like that. How can someone be vegan and they get healthy and they put on big muscle mass, even though they said we can't? I've seen it before. It can happen, right? But then you say, let's follow it long term and see what happens health-wise. Great. So I think a lot of things like you and I had discussions, and it's hard sometimes because we see stuff and go, yeah, the way we're treating this condition isn't right. But if you say something is politically incorrect and people say this is a whatever anti-vaxxer or an anti-statin drug person, and you get labeled where it's like, well, I'm looking at the science and clinical experience, and here's what I'm seeing. Do I deny that, or do I say this is what I'm seeing? Like, if you listen back to our first episodes, there was stuff Tro and I were seeing that the standard medical community said we were nuts and should have our license literally taken, because we were saying, hey, maybe food has something to do with mood and anxiety and stress and addiction. And here's our data. Here's our evidence. We said maybe we're postulating a hypothesis. We weren't saying yes is absolutely true. But guess what? The science supported what we were saying. We were right, but we didn't have the data at the point. But we knew clinical what we were seeing, right? So you see what I'm saying? So people say, well, it doesn't matter unless it's an RCT. Or I'm like, we're seeing anecdotal evidence of all these things improving, and people coming off medicines and feeling better and being happy again when they were depressed and when they killed themselves when they came in the door, right? When you see that, you go, wow, there's something to this that we don't understand why, but it's happening.
In the medical hierarchy, I think it goes like, all right, like epidemiology may be at the bottom. Sorry, epidemiologists. But then like, rodent studies and human clinical trials, RCTs, and then above RCTs, above like meta-analysis of RCTs, N equals ones. Because the only thing that matters at the patient level is the N equals ones. If it works for you, hands off. I don't care. Like, for example, after my doc came out, one of the people that got in touch with me was this woman from New Zealand. And she's like, I watched this. Like, I thought it was really inspirational. Like, I had a similar experience, but she said, but I had leukemia and gut issues, and like, I've been strict vegan and it's really working for me. Now, I am not a proponent of veganism by any means. My response to her was like, I'm not a proponent of veganism by any means, but wow, that worked for you. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. Stick to what you're doing if it works. Because if
absolutely.
It works,
I wanted to call my company N equals one, but I knew I'd step on toes because it's really about you. Like, whoever's listening, it's about you. What works for you? Because if I say, look, go carnivore and you hate meat, that's not a very good plan for you. If you hate vegetables, I'm not gonna say be vegan. Say what works for you. I have patients that are Indian, or they have different cultural beliefs and different religious beliefs. So look, how does this fit into your lifestyle? If it doesn't, it's useless. Yeah. So then we have people who make cookbooks like Maria Emmerich. I love her because she can make cookbooks for any whatever. There's no excuse not to eat healthy, right, at this point. So, but Nick and I, we had that discussion. It's like, look, we all agree. I don't think anyone will disagree that processed food is causing a problem. Our food environment is causing mental illness and sickness.
It's not.
What's that?
Unless there's no reason to eat processed food whatsoever. There's not. Yeah, I think that's a consensus. Like, you don't need to process food. You can eat a whole foods diet, whatever it may be. If you focus on whole foods, you get a lot of the benefit. Even if that includes things like, and people will hate me for saying this, but like, you're much better off eating pineapple, which is super sugary.
Hey Nick,
for some people, it might not be great.
Hey Nick, we're gonna cut this part. Your audio went out just for a second, so just say when you said you're much better off eating. We can start from there. Okay, Jack, we're gonna start here again.
So some people might hate me for saying this, but you're much better off eating something like a banana or a pineapple, which has, been artificially selected, high in fructose. If you have diabetes, I'm not recommending it. But then, I think, a couple of 100-calorie snack bowl packs. And the biology actually supports that. The mechanism supports that. If you want to dig into it, listen to some Gabor Erdersi's lectures about incretin hormones. Like, if you just try to eat real food, you get a lot of the benefit. It doesn't mean that you're doing the optimal thing for you, but you might be moving in the right direction. And that's why there are so many studies showing that X, Y, or Z diet is beneficial. Even veganism. It's like, wow, people on a vegan diet do better than the control. Well, why? Because the control is the standard American diet and you can't get anything worse.
Yeah,
So if you go
and
from
that's
eating,
that's truth, and that's truth. I mean, that is just when you see that, you go, you're comparing it. It's like that's like saying, well, yeah, it's better to smoke marijuana than take cocaine, right? Not that either one of them is great. It's just saying, look, when you compare it to something that's a total failure that we're seeing, and that's why the medical community is stripped. That's why our system is broken. Because really, a friend corrected me because I said we have an undersupply of doctors. They said no, we have an oversupply of sick patients, and I think that's the truth. And having young guys come along like you who get this stuff and understand and have experienced it, that gives me hope that we're like I carried the torch for like 5 or 10 steps, and you guys finished the race. And we had Professor Noakes and Gary Fettke and all these and Gary Taubes and Nina Teicholz, all these people who ran the whole race. They ran the race with everyone throwing bricks at them, basically. And now we get to hold the torch for a little while and have our little day in the sun, and then we pass it off to you young guys, and you guys finish the race. Really, that's how I see it. Because if we want to get our population healthy, that's what we have to do. We have to have a paradigm shift and say, oh, maybe it's something else causing the problem than what we blamed all the time. Maybe it's not the subcutaneous fat that's our enemy. Maybe it's the visceral fat. When we raise those questions and start looking and say, wow, how do I attack this problem? Then we do studies and we prove it. That's what we do. That's why we need you guys. And so, in closing, because I don't want to keep you, I know you're a busy studying guy and you got like
I don't
35
think
studies.
we took a nice tangent, but I don't ever think we the way we left my story was I'm dying in Oxford.
Okay, yeah, let's pick you up dying and see what happened, man.
But yeah, anyway, so that was finally, it takes a lot of motivation, but that's there was a straw that broke, well, my back. I had little fractures there anyway. And so I remember getting back to my room in Oxford, and I was pretty isolated at that point. I had just gotten to Oxford. I had like one kind of friend. I'd known him for a couple of weeks, and then you needed like an emergency contact. I'm like, Adrian, I'm dying. Can you be my healthcare like proxy? And we ended up becoming like best friends. But another wonderful, wonderful person that you probably should have on. Yeah, so that was the moment I'm like, all right, I'm actually out of hope. You said, what do you ground yourself in? I'm done. I'm done. Like, if I die in bed today, like, fine. But I'm not like suicidal. So I'm like, all right, I have no expectations, but I might as well start. Like, I have to do this myself because I've lost hope. I feel alone. Nobody's doing this for me. People want to do it, but nobody has the motivation. Nobody has the time. And so I'm at this point spending like maybe an hour or two on my PhD each day, but most of my time is spent reading papers about the gut and bones and this, that, and the other. And at the same time, I'm experimenting with like basically every intervention you could imagine, every medication. Some were, complete failures. Some diets were complete failures. I've gone through the vegetarian, vegan, FODMAP, SCD, whatever. I've tried it, and I always try it. But then the one I never tried for a while was keto, because it was just like, this is dumb. Like, I've known fruits and veggies are like healthy my whole life, and just eating fat, like this doesn't make sense. And I've been, again, at that time told you need carbs. And I get to the end of the road, but then I start reading these keto papers and this like therapeutic carb restriction literature, and I'm like, wait, the mechanism kind of makes sense. Like, what's up with that? And I keep reading it, and it takes me a while. I finally found a doctor, Dr. Vivian Lowe, who I now call my like second mom. It was amazing. But she was the one that, patients shouldn't need permission, but they feel like they do need permission. And I did, to try this. I'm like, well, what do you think about this? Like, is it okay to try? And she actually said, yes, it's reasonable to try this diet. And she thinks it's actually sensible. I just used it with other people. So I'm like, okay, cool. I guess I'll try it. I have no expectations, but nothing to lose. So what happened? 1 week. It took 1 week. And my calprotectin, so my colitis symptoms went just away. And my calprotectin, which just before starting the diet was elevated at 150, which is 3 times high of normal. That's a fecal marker for inflammation, saying, you have inflammation in your gut. And at this time I was home, so I was going back to Oxford, and it had been a week. And I asked my gastroenterologist, can we get a retest? And he's like, it's unlikely it would have changed in a week, but you're going back to Oxford, and it's hard to get it there because it's NHS, so we might as well get it tested. And it dropped to 20, which is the lowest it had ever been. It just dropped in that week with my symptoms going down. And the symptoms stayed away, and I came off all medications for my colitis, and it remained away. And then a couple of years after that, not even a couple of years, it was like a year and a half into keto, I got my bones retested. And I do want to disclose, I was on bone medications. I had at this point studied my bone biology. I spent a summer at MGH kind of like learning about different therapies. I worked in a lab there and then had a medication therapy regime set up. But the medications had not improved density in my spine, in my hip or my femur. They improved in my spine. It has to do with the trabecular to cortical bone mass. But on keto, even though I lost weight and my thyroid went down, I think my thyroid sensitivity went up. I wasn't hypothyroid functionally, but things that you would predict might make bone worse. So we were a little scared, keto's controlling the colitis, but is it going to make the bones worse? Now you're underweight a little bit just because I couldn't put on weight with keto. That was the worst thing about keto for me, is it made it so hard. The weight loss was too easy.
Nick, people aren't going to like you, man.
I know people are going to like that.
I don't like this guy. He's lost weight.
They're keto curious, or like, this was the bad thing. Like, it's a funny about, like, what was the worst part of keto for you? Weight loss. But anyway, that aside, my bones still got better. My cortical dense regions, my hip and my spine, which hadn't improved, they spiked. And now I no longer clinically have osteoporosis. My lowest T-score at any of the regions is, I think, a negative 1.7, negative 3.3 over a few years. Like, and that is with medications as well. But like I said, the cortical regions only increased after the diet. That's just a correlation. I'll have to follow it up over time. But it's like, I didn't think this was reversible. And in a period of, over between 5 years and a decade, what's like now? No, I only started the medications. Yeah, it's been less than 5 years. Like, I've gone from negative 3.3 to negative 1.7. On this track, it could be 30 and my
Nick, sorry to stop you, man. You cut out for a second.
This whole thing, finding the
Nick, sorry, man. You cut out for a second. Like,
yeah.
you could restart where your bone density. It's just an unstable internet somehow. But start over. Like, sorry, man. I hate to mess up your school of thoughts.
No, not at all.
So just restart from that point, and then I'll have Jack. Jack, sorry, dude. I'm gonna make you work this time. We got some weird internet stuff going on. I don't want anyone to miss any of this.
I guess we have internet stuff. I was saying that my bone density just really improved on a ketogenic diet in regions that I hadn't improved before, even on medication, and that I no longer have osteoporosis, which is phenomenal. And I'm on track to have normal bone density by age 30, which is, bone takes a while to accrue between, when I started meds plus the diet. And the diet was the only thing that really boosted my cortical bone density. My bone density has gone from negative 3.3 T-score to negative 1.7. So, the whole thing with this lifestyle intervention and metabolic medicine is, when I found it, it took me from this low place of really just, being somewhat indifferent to life, not suicidal, but indifferent to life, to having hope. And not only that, but it restored my pleasure in life, my pleasure in food, and transformed what was just a gustatory pleasure into a gustatory and experimental pleasure. Because now I see nutrition and metabolic medicine as like, this is such a cool, fun journey and opportunity to perpetually improve myself beyond absence of disease, but just to get better and better and better. And so now I enjoy it. And one of my missions and passions is to bring that to people, that mindset that, nutrition, food is medicine, food is metabolic health, and we need metabolic health for metabolic diseases, which are the diseases that are affecting the majority of the population. And once you can take that mindset of, this is cool, this is how I improve myself, this is how I get better. It's not just about reversing your diseases, but this is an experiment that I get to do on myself. It's exciting, making learning fun, and I think that's accessible to everybody. You don't need to be a scientist or have a PhD or an MD to, observe what's going on in your body and do little n=1 experiments and iterate every time. Every experiment might not work, but negative data are still data. And so over time you progress. And if you take that mindset and you look back a year, 2 years later, you will be astonished by the progress you make. And again, it doesn't matter what your level of education is, and there is a lot of crap on the internet, but if you trial things on yourself and see what works, and just, always leave a little room in your routine for tweaking variables rather than just sitting where you are, you will find, rather than progressing into disease as you age, you just get better. And that's such a cool thing when you realize it.
That's such great advice. And I think that's, for me, I've done the pescatarian right? Fasting more, fasting less, long-term fast, short-term fast, drinking more alcohol, not drinking alcohol, see how my body responds. Then I know my body, and I look at the literature and say, what does that say? Does it agree with what I'm saying? Yes, it does, right? So I think that's a huge thing, is being able to self-experiment to some degree and go, okay, look, don't do it for 5 years if you're miserable, but say, okay, let me try a month and 6 weeks and see what my numbers do, see how I feel. And I think if we're honest about it, we may say, hey, I can get away with more carbs than that person, or I need more fat in my diet. Some people, they go on a high fat diet, they feel great. They go on a high protein diet, they feel great. They go on a low carb, they're doing. So it's just really what works for them. And I think I'm not going to let you escape here, man, until I know, because it's going to bug me. When you were at the lowest, when you were like not suicidal, but not really caring if you lived or died because you're miserable all the time, did you lean on your own intellect? Did you lean on faith? Did you lean on yoga? What gave you peace when you're at the bottom? Because what I'm seeing in society right now is people are on the bottom, and really, I mean, I've been devastated by the suicide rate during lockdown, and it's real, and it's sad, and it's like, people have lost their business, their houses, and all this stuff, and they're afraid, and they don't know what to believe and who to believe anymore. It's like, when you were at that low point, what did you lean on? Your intellect saying, I'm going to pull myself out of this, or mom and dad, or was it faith, or was it like, what did you do at that low point?
Well, I think first things first is family. If I didn't have my family, I wouldn't have had anything. My even if they didn't all know what was going on, just calls of the family kind of reminded me what's important. I had nothing else, and friends. So there's that. But I don't want people to think about me as like some wise guru who had his ducks in a row during a really hard time like this and dealt with it in an adaptive manner. Because, like I said, I'm only 25 now. Like, I've had some life experience, but I don't think I would have, I dealt with it in the ideal way. But what I really did was, I had no plan B. It was fix the problem or else. So it was like, I when I commit to something, I don't think about a backup. I don't have a safety net. So it was like, I'm going to fix this. Once I set my mind to it, I'm like, I'm going to fix this. And I very well could not have. But like, that's all that went through my mind. I didn't really have the faith. My just family isn't very religious, or the maybe the emotional coping maturity to really deal with what was going on. And since maybe I've gained a little bit, I'm still working on it. I'm still young, so I don't think I'm, like I said, people listening to this might probably are a decent amount older than me and have more wisdom and more grounding. But now what I think about, and I see this in the documentary, I really like this quote from Marcus Aurelius, which the impediment to action advances action. The obstacle becomes the way, or it's something like that. I think I just misquoted it. But the idea is that's like, you put these obstacles in front of you. They're inevitable. But how are you going to respond to them? Are you going to trip over them and fall on your face? Or are you going to see them as an opportunity to pick up the weight and make it stronger? When there's a weight in front of you, two things can happen. If you try to pick it up, it can crush you, or it can make you stronger. So you have these adversities that are thrown in front of you, and everybody does. It's just an inevitable part of life. Why not use them to catapult you to make you a better person? And if it's really, really hard to do in the moment, I'm not going to say it's not, but if you can capture that mindset when something bad happens, even something trivial in a day, it's like, how is this an opportunity to grow as a person? Yeah, I think that's such a valuable tool. I definitely don't have that concept down. It's something I aspire to.
No, that is wisdom, man. I'm telling you, you're young. Yeah, I'm an old man now, and it's weird for me saying, "Hey, young man, listen." But I'm telling you, that is such wisdom when you get these. And for people who like, so many people have obstacles in front of them, and I could tell you, look, I've been through an embezzlement where my old practice, we lost $500,000. Someone ripped us off, right? And I could walk out of that and go, they're not going to have happiness out of that money, and it brought my family closer together. And when we look back, we go, that was probably the best Christmas we ever had, because all we had was each other, right? I didn't go out and buy a bunch of, and we've never been that kind of family to spend a ton of money at Christmas and be in debt the rest of the year and be miserable. But it really does bring it back to like, what's your integrity? Do you want to, like, when something like that happens, you really have to, for me, I'm a man of faith. So I said, okay, do I want vengeance on that person? No, I feel bad for them, really, that they had to do that, because all they had to do was ask and we would have helped them. Those kind of things when you start realizing. And then, but that led me to be at the point where it's scary to leave a practice where I was making good money and I would be financially secure the rest of my life to do this crazy low carb thing that all my friends thought I was having a midlife crisis. But I said, this is what I'm called to do. And then starting the podcast and then having Jason Fung reach out to me and Tro and all these people that have been in my life, when I step back and go, oh my gosh, it was the obstacles that helped me. Now, like seriously, right now I'm looking and I'm thinking, all these obstacles that I see in front of me, like they just get kicked out of the way and I don't even have to jump over them anymore. They're just kicked out, like doors open and people say, hey, I want to come on your podcast. People like you, who's an up and coming guy that's going to like, having you here is like medicine to me, because I look and I go, this gives me hope, man, because I know you're going to help a lot of people. And if I can give you a platform, maybe that's why I have the platform, right? And so I think all of us see our little role, and as long as we understand our role and don't try to overstep or don't let ego get in the way, because really there's people, they see bright scientists coming up and they try to suppress their information because they're like, oh, it's a threat to me because this guy's better than me, right? So for me, it's like, look, let's bring out all the data and we could all agree and disagree. But when I see someone with integrity like you who's been through the life, that's why I wanted you on the podcast. And you're thanking me to have you on, but I'm like, trust me, man, this is in my self-interest, because you're a guy who would pick up the phone and go, I'm seeing this and I don't know why. Nick, explain it to me, dude. Right? Explain it to me. Why am I seeing this? And you can say, look, Brian, here's why you're seeing it. Or you're seeing something that's not true and here's why it's not true, right? So I think having people, like for me, I want friends who keep me accountable and go, Brian, you're off base here. Look, Brian, you need to change this with your podcast. Okay, thanks, man. And they have my best interest in heart. I'm going to listen to them, right?
Yeah. No, it's a great team synergy. One of the things I really found inspiring about this community is you've been particularly generous to me, but everybody, it's like you reach out and they want to give you the time of day, even if you're a little guy, even if you're the small fish. The sharks aren't coming after me. I'm just being kind of like fed by the bigger fish. They're coming along and like sharing a little bit of food, and it's exciting. And what you said is, what we've said about is absolutely true about just the obstacles. I mean, rounding in my whole story, I'm actually super grateful for everything that happened, because now going into med school, I know it's not a chore. I know it's a purpose for me. I've defined my purpose by my story, and I'm like, I know I can feel internally, I've internalized how this can transform lives, and that makes it so personal and meaningful to me. Because when I have a patient's numbers improve and they come to me and they're like, oh, my numbers are improving and I'm feeling a lot better. It's not just like, oh, great, they're feeling better. That's like a nice check on my doctor's box. It's like, I know how you feel. And like, that will feed me. I don't feel like I'll be working my ass off. I don't think I'm going to get burned out very easily. Because now I have this gift of, I was a patient. I mean, I still am a patient, but now I can relate to people. I think, patients will doctors make crappy patients. Patients make great doctors though. So I, hope that to be true.
That's true right there, man. That's true right there. Because I was just thinking when you're talking, I'm thinking, I could just be imagining being your attending physician and this young punk comes in and starts saying, that's not really how it works, like in a nice way. Like some people, like you'll see, man, and you'll see
That's already happened.
You see that, right? And they don't like to be challenged, and instead of looking and going, let me see if he's right, they don't like to be challenged. So I've challenged people before and they didn't like it but I'm like, what you're saying isn't true. I'm just telling you from my experience, it's just not true. But you shouldn't keep perpetuating something that's not true. And I think that's the thing is that I laugh because I think when you go, well, it doesn't really work that way to the expert and they don't like that. So, because I like it when someone says, Brian, you know what, have you thought about this way? Like in a nice way. Not an arrogant way, but that's what I mean. That's what you have is that you can go to the attending and go, hey, man, let me pull you aside and tell you, I don't want to embarrass you in front of everyone, but you're not right on this one. Trust me. Right. So it's kind of a funny thing because they've, for me, daily, people will come in and go, doctor, you need these 6 meals. Like they think I've been in a cave somewhere and I've never heard that you have to eat 6 meals a day, that you have to have oatmeal for breakfast and heart healthy whole wheat and all this stuff. I'm like, the data doesn't support that. Even though you've been told that over and over, I know what you've been told about fat and I know what you've been told, but let's try something different. And then they crush it. They do great, right? But it's a paradigm shift. In medicine, we are the worst, the absolute worst at paradigm shift, because we were told things from our attending and they were told from their attending, but no one ever said, yeah, let's go back and look at the data. Guys like you who look at the data, it's a totally different thing because you say, look, this hormone doesn't do that. Brian, doesn't work that way, right? And then we can make ourselves better doctors or we could be arrogant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to the day where you don't have to have a personal or familial lack of a better word, conversion experience. Like, you know, me or you, where you just, you have to go through something to be like, I'm actually going to look at the data. When people actually just look at the data and say, oh, the data is going to speak for itself. Because if I hadn't gone through what I'd gone through, I'd be perpetuating the same things that, you know, you just talked about. 5-6 small meals a day, get on statins if your LDL is above 190, whatever. Blanket statements, because that's what we know, because it's in the, you know, it's standard practice, and the standard practice has obviously been vetted. Obviously, if people can't see it from the podcast, I'm doing air quotes. I don't know when we'll get to that day. I do feel like we're hitting an inflection point. Earlier, you said like my generation's going to take the torch and run to the end of the finish line. I hope that's true. I hope we're there. And I think there is some reason to believe it, that the worst is past, that the Ninas and the Garys and the Yus have already, you know, run part of the race and gotten bricks thrown at them. So I can, you know, run comfortably to the end, but we'll see. I just don't know. I'm hopeful though.
Hey, Nick, in closing again, man, we might close 5 times, but in closing, like, what do you think is life's best medicine, man? What has been your rock? What has kept you going through the battles and health battles and everything else? Is that like the thirst for knowledge? Is it the thirst to help people? Is it the thirst to help? What is it, man? Like, if you go, look, here's life's best medicine right here. I'm on my deathbed. I'm gonna tell you what matters.
Curiosity. I think that's what keeps me going. Forever, you know, it's different things for different people, but for me, it's that there's always a question. That's kind of my purpose, just to kind of like be interested and keep asking questions. That's been the way I was. I think I was programmed that way from birth. Like, I'm trying to, you know, I see a dead snake and there's a lump in its stomach. Like, is it pregnant? Did it just eat something? I need to do a dissection. This is me at like 3 or 4. And I've been like that my whole life. Now it's a little bit, you know, more mechanical, biological, reading papers, but I'm just curious about everything. And this is probably pathological and not great, but I can't let go of a thought or a question or something like lingering in my mind. I have to attack it, and that's just the way I am. Sometimes it causes anxiety. I'm not saying it's the best way to be, but if nothing else, maybe it won't make my life as happy as it could be, but it hopefully will make me happier, a better doctor, a better healthcare provider, because I am just curious. When people come to me with problems and I haven't seen it before, I'm like, I need to know what's going on. Like, I just need to. And if it's not for the selfless reason all the time of just, I want to cure you, that's part of it. But it's like, this is so weird. I need to know. That's, you know, for me, that's the purpose of medicine. So
yeah, and that's medicine to me, man. That's medicine to me, because I'm telling you, I was talking to Nick before we recorded. I have a patient who's 3 months sugar average went from 9.8 to 6.2 in 3 months. Went back to their doctor and was so excited to show the doctor. The doctor had no curiosity of what they did and why they lost weight and why their blood pressure normalized and why everything was better. They just said, "Oh, okay, we'll see you in 3 months." Like there's nothing, like for me, when I had a patient lose weight and reverse diabetes or put it into remission, however you want to say it, I was amazed. I'm like, how in the heck did you do it, man? Because now there's a path forward, because it was a hopeless. Like I told people, I practiced medicine for, I think it was 16 years before I saw anyone come off insulin ever one time, right? And it was when I saw it one time, and then it happened 11 times in 6 months. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to change what I'm doing here. I can't deny this anymore. And so I think that's it. When you lack curiosity as a physician, you're not doing in any field. If you lack curiosity or you're not willing to learn from other people, you're not helping anyone.
I'm going to refine my response to make it more general, because as you're talking,
you think too much, man. That's a type A thing, man. You got to just stick with your response, brother. I'm kidding you.
Well, I think it's more about deciding what's important to you with respect to how you relate to other people. For me, it's going to be partly being a physician, but it could be, you know, you're an entertainer, you're a musician, you're a comedian, and then get better at your craft. For me, that requires curiosity, and that's why I say curiosity, but it's not for, you know, everybody's going to have their different trait. And there can be multiple. I want to be a good father too when that time comes. And so I'll work on that trait. Just find your priorities, to figure out what you have to do to get better at it, what qualities you want to cultivate, and then cultivate those qualities, because, you know, I don't necessarily believe in an afterlife. So if life's somewhat of a game, I'm going to enjoy it. And part of the game is leveling up and getting better. So I want to decide what I want to get better at. And curiosity is, for me, the formula to get there.
Yeah, man. Like, what works for you, right? So I'm a guy of faith, and I go, look, I'll say I'm not in control of all this stuff. God, you're in control. And I can see the snake that's dead. And I go, hey, is it dead? Cool. I'll walk by it. Someone else will figure out why I don't care why the snake died. And I don't care why the sun comes out. I don't care about a lot of stuff, but I just want to enjoy it, right? At some point, my patient gets better. I'm okay with that. I don't need to know the mechanism, but I need guys like you who think that way. That's why we need each other, because I could just take and go, it's working. It's working. I'll keep this formula works. I'll keep doing that. If it doesn't work, I change the formula. Right. So I think that's true. If life's not working for you, then you change the formula. You may come to a point where you go, hey, I need faith. You may never come to that point. But I know a lot of people, when they're dying, it becomes a priority now for them. They go, I never thought about this stuff, doc. What do you think? What's your opinion? Right. I go, this is my opinion, but here we go. So I think that's what makes it beautiful, is like, hey, whatever, this is what I've been telling my atheist friends, my Buddhist friends, my Muslim friends, like, dude, if it works for you, cool. If being vegan works for you, cool. Like, tell me how you're doing it. I want to learn something from your faith. I want you to learn something from my faith of why I believe what I believe, right? So some people don't believe, right? And you may be one of those guys, but I think it's one of those things. Ultimately, we look and go, what works for me when I'm lying in the bed? That's why I want to know. That's why I'm doing this podcast, is like, when you're at your wit's end and everything's falling apart, people are going to say, yeah, I agree with Nick, and that's my way to go. People are going to say, I agree with Brian, that's my way to go. Some people are going to agree with my friend Reza or whatever. But I think what I've seen is this lack of hope. Like you said, you had hope. You had hope because you can make yourself better. You could work hard, and you have the intellect. And I would say God gave you the intellect to do that. You may say, hey, I just developed it because of my parents, whatever. You have the intellect, however you got it, you got it. So, moving forward and saying, look, I want to make that impact. And if all people believe, look, I want to make the world a better place, then you don't have people on Twitter saying, oh, you lost 200 pounds, but look at that ugly skin that you have hanging down. Or you've accomplished this great feat, but guess what? Other people have done that before too. Big deal. You're nothing. So like, why not encourage each other along the way and say, hey, that's cool. You did it that way, man. It worked for you. Awesome. If you're vegan and you reverse your diabetes, cool. Like, I've had that discussion with people. Cool, man. If it's working, keep doing what you're doing. I'll do it for the people who want to do it my way. You do it for people who want to do it your way. We're all happy and we all go on. It's not like my way's better than yours, because it may be better for my patients, but not better for your patients. So I think as long as we have that, and what you said is important, is curiosity too. So Nick, I'll let you close us, man. Any words of wisdom you want to drop on us on the way out, you young man who knows a lot of stuff?
I'm done with wisdom. My 25 years of wisdom have been tapped out. I'm going to close on a message of gratitude to you and to everybody else in this community who I've met, just because, those stories, I've been telling people, and if you go to watch the documentary, please drop your story in the comments. I love to read stories. Those are what drive me. Those are what feed me. It's the people that came before me. Most people are older than me that have had to suffer through being a clinician or being a journalist, researcher, a patient in this space for years, decades. It's because of you that I didn't have to suffer for that long. My suffering was intense and acute, but it's over as far as I'm concerned. I still have some problems, you're always improving, but it's over because people before me, really struggle with this, including all the patients, all the listeners who might be struggling with disease, or had family members who struggle with disease. And I think, you suffered so people could have a better future. So thank you is where I want to leave it.
Hey, Nick, thanks so much. Best of luck to you in your career. I know it's going to be illustrious, and you're gonna solve a lot of problems and help a lot of people along the way. There's no better gift than healing and bringing hope to people. I could tell you that from experience. That's my life experience, and whether there's RCT on it or not, I'll tell you that's true. And so everyone listening, thank you. I know we went long, but this is really important. This is someone that you're going to want to follow and watch and learn from. There's wisdom here that's you're going to want to listen to this a couple of times, because it's going to take a little while to grasp everything that we talked about. But ultimately, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. Have a great week, and continue to grow. If you're stuck somewhere, if you're stuck in the mud, figure out a way out, or reach out to people who can pull you out. Whatever it takes. Don't give up hope. Always hold on to hope, and that's really what I want to tell people, and that's why we're doing this podcast. And just thank you for listening. I know this is a valuable hour of your time, or a little plus this time, but this is important. You could watch a sitcom on TV and get nothing, or you could listen to people like Nick and get some life wisdom that are going to help you out. So thank you for listening. Nick, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, bro.
Keep doing your thing, man.
Thank you.
for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.